petty thief who didn't know any better. Ning Feng, she said, had actually stolen from a 4th transformation strongman and had probably been crushed to pieces by now. She angrily shouted at the lady that she was talking nonsense because Ning Feng couldn't be that kind of person. But the lady laughingly told her that their master, Wang, had specially sent someone to investigate that guy, and the one surnamed Ning was just a waste who awakened as a 1-star professional at the age of 18, with both parents dying early, and he had no ability to get high-level items. The lady also told her that now that the 4th transformation strongman had come directly to Ning Feng's door, so if Ning Feng was not a thief, then question what is he. Suddenly, someone sharp appeared in front of the lady. He apologized to her and told her that her mouth really needed a beating because she almost made him lose his temper, and the lady slammed onto the ground in fear while in front of her was a sharp stone from the floor. The lady looked back and saw that it was him and asked him how dare he use offensive spells in the trading post. The lady then shouted for the guards. Yang Xin told him to go quickly before the guards arrived, but he just told her not to worry. She explained to him that the forces above the Yuancheng trading post were not small at all and ordinary people couldn't afford to offend them, so if they caught him, it would be troublesome. Suddenly, someone with the guards appeared, and Wang asked him who gave him the courage to act recklessly in their Yuancheng trading post. He just told Wang that he heard he was investigating him behind his back and even framed him as a thief. Wang told him that whether he was a thief or not, he knew best, and if he wanted to question him, he was not qualified enough. The guards then rushed to him, but he just showed his card and told Wang that he understood now that this was how he treated guests in his Yuancheng trading post. The guards forcefully stopped themselves from getting closer to him when they saw the card. Wang, who was in shock, asked him if it was the supreme black card of their trading post, and the lady asked how that was possible. The lady then shouted that it must be fake. He told Wang that it was a gift from Mayor Kai Dongming, so it carried some weight. Wang asked him where he got it from, but he retorted by asking Wang if he wasn't good at investigations and told him to investigate it himself. The lady, who was in horror, asked Wang what they should do, but Wang just ordered the guards to keep an eye on Ning Feng while he would make a call to inquire. On the other hand, the people outside weren't allowed to enter and wondered what was going on because the guards were stopping them from going through. A moment later, Kai Dongming, who was on the phone with Wang, told Wang that the HQ had informed him he was investigating the membership card he gave to Ning Feng and asked what was going on. Wang stutteringly replied that nothing was going on and it was just a small misunderstanding, knowing that Kai Dongming's father is one of the founders of the trading post, and wondered how Ning Feng could befriend Kai Dongming. But then Kai Dongming, shoutingly, tells Wang that Ning Feng is someone he worked hard to win over, and if he offends him, Wang fearfully responded that he hadn't and told Kai Dongming not to worry about it because he would handle it properly. However, Kai Dongming figured out that he really had offended Ning Feng and asked him what gave him the guts. Kai Dongming hit his table in anger and told Wang to wait for him because he would be right there, then hung up, leaving Wang wondering in tears what the relationship between Kai Dongming and Ning Feng was and why Kai Dongming was so angry. Wang then figured out that he would call that 4th transformation big shot and tell him that the fighter suit had been found, knowing that even if Duan confronts Kai Dongming, Duan would have to show some respect. A moment later, in the waiting area of the Yuancheng exchange, Kai Dongming and Duan were rushing toward him. He asked them why they were there, and Yang Xin was surprised to see Mayor Kai Dongming and the 4-star boss from last time, wondering why they seemed so warm to Ning Feng. Kai Dongming and Duan then angrily looked at the lady, making her feel scared and wonder why they were all flattering her. She was shocked to see her boss, Wang, weak and defeated. The lady asked Wang what was wrong with him, and Wang replied that it was over and all was gone. Kai Dongming respectfully asked him if he really did not need them to apologize, and he replied that there was no need because he didn't think Wang was the kind of person who would repent just by apologizing. Kai Dongming then shouted to Wang and the lady to pack their things in a hurry and get out of there, leaving both stunned in shock and defeat. Wang then slapped the lady while shouting at her that it was all because of her and that she had ruined him. Kai Dongming, in frustration, called the guards and ordered them to get those two out of there. A moment later, in the VIP room, Yang Xin served them tea, and Kai Dongming noticed that Ning Feng seemed to have a good impression of Yang Xin and was glad that it was not ruining the exchange's reputation completely. Yang Xin then stared at him, thinking that he was really impressive because, at a young age, he was able to converse with those big shots so effortlessly. Kai Dongming then told her that she had been wrong this time, but she should work hard in the future and the exchange wouldn't let her down. She shyly agreed and responded that she would definitely work hard. He apologized to Kai Dongming for going to all that trouble for his sake, but Kai Dongming replied that it was not a problem at all because his matters were his matters, and if it wasn't for his intervention last time, Longfu City would have been in danger. Kai Dongming then told him that he seemed to be interested in the treasure catalog of the exchange and asked him if there was something specific he was looking for. He replied yes and asked Kai Dongming if he had heard of something called the Relic of the End. Kai Dongming asked him what relic he was talking about, and Duan asked him about the end of what it was, but he just told them not to mind it and that he had seen it on the internet yesterday, so he thought it was some rare item. He then remembered getting the book out of his inventory, which was the Spirit Energy Extraction book given by his teacher Kai Wai for mages to temporarily replenish their mana in battle. He wondered what kind of forbidden spell it would turn into. He then absorbed it using his Dark Confluence skill, which absorbs the residual dark power from it and transforms it into one's own attributes. After that, he wondered if that character was pronounced D because he had never heard of it and saw that the system didn't explain it, making him wonder where he was supposed to find it. However, he decided to forget about it for a while since there was no rush to use it, and went to sleep. A moment later, when he had finished his business at the exchange, Kai Dongming told him that the trip was hasty, but next time they must visit Longbo City again. He would host them. Kai Dongming then took out a flight teleportation scroll and used it to fly back to Longbo City. He then told Duan that they should have something to eat together, but Duan suggested they eat at his place. A moment later, in Duan's villa, he was amazed while looking around and asked Duan if it was the house the city had provided him with. Duan replied that they say those of 4 turns and above who choose to stay in Kinyu City get special treatment, and if he liked it, he should consider moving there and he could find another place. But he just laughingly told Duan that it was not necessary because he would save up some money and buy one, so he could be his neighbor. Duan seriously told him that if he was in need of money, he had some as well, but he just asked Duan how he could use his money. He smiled, knowing that he had earned a fair amount of crystal coins from selling equipment lately, so converting it to cash and buying a villa wasn't a problem for him at all. But in that way, he wouldn't have many crystals left, and if he needed them later, it was always a bit troublesome. He knew there was no rush to move in, so he shouldn't worry too much. After eating, he drank tea and felt refreshed. Duan told him that the villa area had its own chefs and he had already called them, so they would be there soon, making him think that it was quite convenient. Suddenly, Duan's phone rang, and Zhang Jai told him that there was something he might need his help with because the investigative team from above was probing the disasters that struck their city, and there were some complications, so he'd like to discuss them with him. Duan looked at him, making him confused, and Duan thought their investigation might affect Ning Feng, so he thought he'd ask Ning Feng's opinion first. He apologized to Zhang Jai and explained that he might not have time today. Zhang Jai told him that there were no worries about it and that whenever he had time in the next 2 days, he should just contact him. After Duan told him everything, he told Duan that he wondered what kind of people they were. Meanwhile, someone said that in the forsaken city of Kinyu, the notion of a mysterious boss was laughable. In the meeting room, the man arrogantly asked if anyone had ever seen the so-called mysterious big shot. Quang Lan replied that no one had. The man then questioned why there was such a widespread rumor that this mysterious big shot had saved Kinyu City when no one had seen him. Quang Lan explained that it was mainly because the dungeon invasion had suddenly stopped at that time, and the mutants assisting in the invasion were also wiped out. However, the man shouted at her not to joke and stated that until they thoroughly investigated, the danger level of the dungeon invasion couldn't be used as evidence. He then inquired about the other 2 incidents in the dungeon, 2 attacks above king level, and what their so-called mysterious big shot had done. Quang Lan remained silent and did not answer. Kai Wai looked down, thinking that to protect Ning Feng, Quang Lan had used her authority to modify all the information that might involve him, making all the pressure from that matter fall on her. Suddenly, Zhang Jai barged into the meeting room and stutteringly informed everyone that he had just called Duan. But Duan said he was busy today. The man angrily exclaimed that he was so annoyed by those free adventurers who were out of control because they were just stray dogs without a guild, acting so busy. He then told Zhang Jai to forget about it because he would take full charge of the investigation, and they should all do something else. Later, in the dungeon at Awei Tomb, the man stepped on a branch on the ground, causing a cracking sound. The guard stopped him from approaching closer to the dungeon, but he smilingly greeted them good evening. One of the guards recognized him as the one from the investigation team. He told them he'd like to come inside the dungeon and do some investigation, which the guards smilingly agreed to. He then walked inside the dungeon and thought that although it was not his first time entering, seeing the level of destruction still made him marvel, making him wonder what kind of power could destroy a dungeon so thoroughly. He noticed that even the remnants of the dark power were still pure and powerful, and thought that no matter what nonsense about a mysterious big shot they talked about, in the face of such an existence, they were like ants. In a surge of excitement, the man shouted jubilantly that it was truly a thrilling place. Raising his hand, he unleashed a dark power, summoning a demon from the residual darkness. He crazily proclaimed that it was indeed worthy of a king-level threat, as the surrounding area brimmed with formidable forces, all of which were now his. Meanwhile, at Duan's mansion, Ningfeng was intently using his phone when the system alerted him that it had detected the final relic. Shocked, he realized that something was connecting with him through its aura, knowing that focusing would clarify the connection and reveal the relic's location. He grabbed his coat from the floor and put it on while standing. When Duan inquired where he was going, Ningfeng replied that he needed to step out for a bit. He handed his phone to Duan, instructing him to finish the round for him and to avoid losing any ranks, leaving Duan confused. Ningfeng then hailed a taxi and noticed from the navigation that the relic was near the treacherous graveyard, and he was stunned to see that it was moving. At the entrance to the treacherous graveyard dungeon, the guards confronted a demon while reporting that an unidentified creature had been spotted in the area. Trembling with fear, the guards frantically questioned the nature of the creature in front of them. Meanwhile, atop the demon, the man cried out, immobilized and pleading for help. Back on the road, traffic halted as someone announced that no passage was allowed ahead due to danger. The taxi driver informed Ningfeng that they couldn't proceed further, to which Ningfeng responded that it was okay, and he would get off there. He sensed that the relic had stopped moving for now. In the graveyard, chaos ensued as the solitary shadow approached. The guards and Quang Lan, who had just arrived, were all shocked to see the man on top of the demon. Quang Lan, in surprise, demanded to know what was happening. A moment later, as the demon rampaged, Quang Lan lay severely injured on the ground. Fortunately, Kai Wai was there to assist, utilizing the advanced equipment Ningfeng had provided. This gear allowed her to forego the usual chanting and begin treatment immediately. Despite her efforts, Kai Wai understood the gravity of the situation. Even Quang Lan, in her strength, could not halt the demon alone. After some preliminary healing, Quang Lan stood and urgently inquired about the demon's whereabouts. Kai Wai, still concerned, replied that it had headed towards the downtown area. She added anxiously that Major Zhang Jai had already called Duan for help, but she was uncertain if they would arrive in time. Quang Lan, knowing that Duan's capabilities were similar to her own, realized that Duan alone might not be enough to confront the demon. However, the person backing Duan could be their final hope. Meanwhile, the demon continued its destructive path through the city, seething with rage. It was caught off guard by Ningfeng, who, astonished, remarked that it was the end of Term's skull and far too large. As Ningfeng contemplated whether to subdue it with another forbidden spell first, the demon lunged at him, claws aimed at his head. The claws struck with a loud clang against his shield, startling the demon and making it recoil in fear, wondering how such a defense was possible. At that moment, the system alerted Ningfeng that it had detected the end of Term's skull and inquired whether he wished to initiate absorption. He clicked yes, curious whether proximity was a requirement for absorption. His eyes widened as the absorption began, releasing a powerful, bright light in front of the demon. The light struck the demon, causing it to scream in pain. As the light engulfed it, Ningfeng glimpsed the story of how a man had transformed into this demon and led a horde of monsters. Following the encounter, all of Ningfeng's attributes increased by 100. Amazed, he realized that such a generous increase was unprecedented, even for a 3-star profession advancing from level 0 to the 3rd transformation. However, he also sensed that something more than just attributes had been absorbed, as images of different stages began to form in his mind. Suddenly, Duan appeared behind Ningfeng and rushed to him, asking what had happened. Ningfeng pointed to the fallen demon and explained that there had been a demon, but he had taken care of it as it seemed necessary, especially since the man had collapsed behind the demon's head. Duan, puzzled, wondered if this was the demon Zhang Jai had mentioned in reports of a monster invasion. He knew Ningfeng was adept at handling monsters, but the aura nearby didn't seem to emanate from a powerful spell, leaving Duan curious about how Ningfeng managed it. Ningfeng placed his hand on Duan's shoulder, smiling, and said he had arrived just in time and would leave the cleanup to him. Duan quickly agreed, understanding his role. Ningfeng then dashed away with lightning speed, leaving Duan amazed at his swiftness. Duan, aware that Ningfeng wasn't a mage, realized that his speed surpassed many agility-based professions and marveled that his boss truly was extraordinary, admitting to himself that he had much to learn. Later, in Kin Yu's prison, the man implicated as the monster was behind bars while a report circulated. It detailed that the man had stumbled upon the demon in a mysterious realm where he could harness dark power for his own use. He had taken advantage of the investigation to enter the realm and absorb the dark power, not anticipating that the demon would spiral out of control. Zhang Jai, filled with excitement, declared that there really was a mysterious boss protecting Kinyu City. Huang Lan and Kai Wai couldn't help but smile at this revelation. Zhang Jai then turned to Duan and inquired if he had ever seen this mysterious boss. Duan responded that he had the honor once, leaving the ladies stunned and intrigued by his revelation. Zhang Jai, hopeful, asked Duan if he could arrange an introduction with the mysterious expert, promising that if the expert were willing to stay permanently in Kinyu City, they would meet whatever needs might arise. Duan, however, explained that his boss preferred to keep a low profile and rarely made public appearances, suggesting that they abandon the idea. Privately, Duan was relieved that he and Ningfeng had cleverly deflected attention to this non-existent mysterious expert, aware that without concrete evidence, nothing could be proven. Zhang Jai,